Hi, I'm Mike Smith. And delegates, I want to thank you for being part of our summer seminar. And I've had the opportunity, the responsibility of teaching history now for the last 16 years. And I hope that here in our summer seminar programs that we can share ideas with you that you can implement into the classroom as well. We call this session History's Mysteries. And what do we mean by that? Is it how the pyramids were made, or going into conspiracy theories, or anything from the 1960s? Well, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the disconnect that many of our students have with history. Of course, you're not going to have every student that loves every subject, unless, of course, it's probably lunch or PE or whatever the case may be. And then even then, sometimes they're not going to like the school's pizza, right? But we're talking about just how our average students, we find that there's this disdain for anything that happened in the past. And of course, they're not interested in anything in current events either. So, boy, what are they interested in? And more than finding out what they're interested in is the need for us to get across the importance of history to our students, and for us to also recognize the importance of it as well. Truth be known, our students do love history. They celebrate history. They commemorate history. It's called birthdays, right? It's their birthday. Something that happened in the past is very important to them. They have no problem getting out of school for Veterans Day, for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, and those are, of course, examples of us remembering the past. What did the Bible say? To remove not the ancient landmarks. So why is their disdain for history so prevalent? Well, I think it comes down to this. We as history teachers, we're boring. The only thing sadder than Charlie Brown's Christmas tree was Charlie Brown's teacher. And we've become that, haven't we? Think of the disadvantage we have as a history teacher, okay? So I'm going to assign pages 10 through 15 to be read. Go home, read it. I'm going to threaten them with a reading quiz to ensure that they read it, answer questions about it so that they know the material really well. And then I expect them to come into class the next day and to be excited about the events that I'm going to tell them that they learned last night, essentially. And so if all I'm doing is giving what's in the book, and it's just a lecture style, then absolutely we are going to lose our students. And I don't think that I can overemphasize this when I say that we are in an absolute spiritual battle for the minds of our students. If we do not give them the truth, then the world is going to give them some version of it. And they being the world is absolutely on attack mode for the lives and minds of our young people, okay? So, very important here. Ask almost any teacher why they love the subject that they love, assuming that they love it, and they'll probably point you back to a teacher that taught that subject. Boy, I can think of a Mr. Clater in high school, a Dr. Northrup, a Dr. Lohman in college, a Dr. Bowman, okay? And these teachers instilled in me a love for that subject because they were really good at what they did, and they were not boring, right? So here it is. Why is history important? I had a senior one time, and I asked them, hey, it was off the cuff. It wasn't in class. It was even before homeroom. We were just discussing, and I asked, hey, so who's the president during World War II? And this young lady looked at me, and she said, why don't we just Google it? Okay, so now here, you're facing students, and you're telling them to memorize facts, memorize dates, and they're thinking, why can't I just pick up my smartphone and now it's become a verb, right? Google it. Well, I think we need to explain to our students that big tech, that search engines, that they are media. Media is biased. What do we want to do, okay? As a history teacher, we must instill in our students the importance of becoming independent thinkers. Not independent of God or God's truth, but not dependent on anyone else to see the truth in God's words or biblical principles that should shape our worldview. If you think about it, it was that mindset that really brought mankind out of the Dark Ages, ushered us into the modern age. It was Martin Luther doing an independent, methodical study of God's word. Man is justified by faith and not through, dare we say, a search engine or the authority of that time, which was the church, right? But instead it being God's word. So let's define history. History is the written history of the time that God has given man, or the written story of the time that God has given man. Now, did history exist before the written record of it? Okay, would be a better way of saying it. The written record of the time that God has given man. Oh, well, certainly it did, but it's almost hearsay. We have no proof of this. For the Christian history teacher, take great confidence in what we have, God's word, right? In the beginning. So, written record of the time that God has given man. Now we know that depending on our optics, historians are going to tell this story either through a biblical worldview or a secular worldview. And what a wonderful opportunity we have and responsibility to teach it through a biblical worldview. Before we go any further, as Christian school teachers, we must understand, again, the warfare that we're fighting. I referenced this earlier. We're not fighting it alone. We are more than conquerors. Maybe you're a first-year teacher. There's some topics. Things are you're a little shaky in your confidence on those topics that you're going to need to discuss in class. Know that we are more than conquerors, right? Hey, if God be for us, who can be against us? Satan wants to destroy our foundation as a nation. He's attacking our traditional Judeo-Christian beliefs, our capitalistic free enterprise, the family, the profit motive, and here we are standing on the front line. And so if nothing else, that should give us some evidence of the importance of our responsibility, okay? Tell the student who dislikes history that they have something in common with communists. No, I'm not calling the student a communist, but I do remember when that used to be an insult, right? They may say thank you, because history is littered with the failed attempts of communisms. Let's just progress forward. Oh yeah, let's progress right off a cliff. So we've defined history. I think we're beginning to see the importance of it. Let's take a look at some improper views of history. The first one that we're going to see is the cyclic view. The next one is going to be the economic determinism, and then a third one would be the conflict theory. Really, we could probably include a lot more, but kind of see these are the three main improper views. We'll go ahead and take a look at the cyclic view. History will repeat itself if we fail to learn from it. We've heard that quote before, right? That quotation, I should say. If we fail to learn from history, it's doomed to repeat itself. Well, sure, that is if we fail to learn from it, but it does not have to repeat itself. Think about the inadvertent message that we are sending to our young people. If, hey, this is just your lot in life. This is the number that was drawn for you. This is going to be your life for the rest of your life. They're coming from a home where there's nothing but screaming and the slamming of doors, okay? They've been told that they're worthless, and if they're just caught up in this cycle of history, then this is all that they will ever be, right? That is a very fatalistic approach, and it teaches teenagers that life is a miserable train wreck. Let's go to economic determinism. The idea that wealth is the driving force. Now, as Christians, we understand that the love of money is the root of all evil, right? But money itself is not evil. This theory does not explain why the giants of the age of enterprise were some of the greatest philanthropists. And I'm not talking about in just a percentage, but in the amount that they gave. The book, Gospel of Wealth, explains that no man should die rich. thus promoting the idea by the wealthiest men to give it away, not through government intervention. Jamestown, yes, it had some economic motives, but it was not the driving force behind the Pilgrims' epic journey, right? Stop and talk to this about to your students. Why did the Pilgrims come over? Oh, well, it's because of economic freedom, religious freedom. Well, they had religious freedom in Leiden, Holland. Really, they risked it all so that their children could have a Christian education. And boy, put that back on your students. Hey, what are your parents sacrificing in order for you to be able to go to a Christian school as well, right? So yes, profit motive does exist in America. And we would say that without apology. And that is a wonderful thing that profit motive does exist. You know where profit motive does not exist? North Korea, right? Other communist country. Profit motive is an economic term which means that you should be rewarded for your hard work. Let's stop turning this into a Karl Marx philosophy of the history of America, right? And so to springboard off of Marxism, we go into our next one, which is the conflict theory. Okay, conflict theory. This is certainly rearing its ugly head as we hear from outraged parents expressing their disapproval of school boards across America. I mean, it is G.W. Hegel's dialectic thinking of you take something good and you take its opposite and let's merge this together and see what good comes from this. Let's take peace and let's combine war with this and we'll get a synthesis from this, right? It is Marxist class warfare. It is race warfare. It is economic theory, okay? Look, as Christian conservative history teachers, we do not gloss over the injustices of the past. We address them. We go to the core of the issue, which is man's sin problem and our need of a Savior to cleanse us. And how possibly some Christian men passed legislation to change some of those injustices as well, okay? Again, we could probably go into other improper views other than just the cyclic, economic, and conflict theories. Let's take a look at the proper view, and very simply, it is the linear view, right? Linear view. The idea that there was a beginning, and the idea that there will definitely be an end. Should the Lord tarry his coming, right, through death, but then we know the rapture, the Lord's second coming after the rapture, a linear view. And what this tells us is that there's a timeline, that we have a purpose in life, and that as we study that written record of the time that God has given man, we see that there's accountability to our Creator and that there are consequences, both negative and positive, for our actions. So, the proper view, linear view. We've taken a look at the improper view. We've defined history. Now let's go ahead and take a look at why is history important. We can always take a look at the word itself, and no doubt you probably have used this in class or heard it, but his story, right? It is his story. He is the author of truth, not of confusion, not of lies. For an evolutionist, for a group of evolutionists, it's as though they are taking a look at a 500-page book, and they turn to page 250, right in the middle. They read that page, and then they theorize about the beginning of the book. And you could have 10 evolutionists, and you're going to have 10 different views on the beginning of that book. And for the Christian, what great joy we have in the confidence and knowing in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so we study that time in between the beginning and the end. Why is history important? It puts other disciplines in perspective. Okay, it really does. Everything has its history. Those students that are very tech savvy, right? They love the gadgets. Listen, it has its history. It shows God working through man. you can see in a timeline, right? So we've got 1440, Columbus. How about 1492? Excuse me. Columbus sails the ocean blue. 1440, we've got the printing press. All right, so 1440 printing press, Johann Gutenberg over in Europe. You've got someone coming from Europe over here to the Western Hemisphere. 1492, Christopher Columbus. A few years later, 1517, you've got someone back in Europe reading the Bible for themselves. Man shall be justified by faith, okay? And now we are printing that material, and this is all in the timing of, again, the founding of North America and South America as well, okay? So God working through man, it gives an understanding to other cultures. But why would that culture do this? Oh, well, this is a culture that's void of God. So it explains why we do that. Listen, if you were to see an individual trying to cross a busy street and they were physically blind, okay, they could not see, you would not be mad at that person. You would have sympathy, empathy for them. And listen, a lot of our cultures that we study, there was not this background of a Judeo-Christian belief. They're spiritually blind. So it gives understanding to other cultures. Okay, I think it was important to establish the necessity, if you will, for history class. If we don't believe it's important, we're never going to be able to convey that to the students. And so they're sitting here, and again, they're just hearing Charlie Brown's teacher. Now, let's talk about how to teach so that we are not so boring, how it can come alive to our students. First thing to do is you got to tie the known to the unknown. Okay, tie the known to the unknown. This is making an illustration. For example, income redistribution, right? That's a fancy word for communism, for socialism. And the eighth grader may be sitting here going, I don't really care about that. I don't even have an income right now. No, but you know what that eighth grader does have? The eighth grader's got a GPA, right? And so have some fun in class, and you want to call on a student. All right, Tommy, so you got a 100 on that test. That's an excellent job, Tommy. Now, you call on Bobby. Don't call on a student who's actually very weak in your class. That'll just embarrass them. Probably call on another student that's doing very well. So we'll call on Bobby. And we're just going to pretend. And Bobby knows he did not make the grade that I'm going to say. And everybody else knows that Bobby did not make this grade. So that kind of makes it funny. All right, so Tommy, you got a 100. Bobby, we see on that last test, you got a 40, okay? And everybody kind of probably chuckles. Bobby, you really need some help. Now, truth of the matter is that Tommy, you want an A, okay? So look, I can take 10 points away from you. That puts you at a 90. You're at an A- still. Look, I mean, that's pretty good. We're going to take 10 points away from you, and we're going to give it to Bobby over here. Bobby's pretty excited. He's now up to a 50. He's still failing. Okay, Susie, we need to take 5 points away from you. Give it to Bobby. He's up to a 55 here. And so what we're doing is we're going around the room. Now look, this didn't lower anyone down to another letter grade. Okay, you're still at an A. You're still at a B. Some of you were at a C+. Now you're at a C- because Bobby really needed. Hey, don't you care about Bobby? And at this point, they're sitting here going, nope. I do not care about Bobby. But Bobby, he's happy about this, okay? And so explain income redistribution that way, but don't stop there, okay? Now, follow that up, and we're going to get into this in just a moment. But follow this up with what eventually is going to end up happening, right? And you want them to get to the point where Tommy says, listen, why should I even study to try to get a 100 if my extra effort is going to go to Bobby? Why don't I just become like Bobby and then get some extra points allocated my way? So now we see what's happening. We're not bringing Bobby up. we're bringing everyone else down to that level. And when everyone's making a 40, well, then you can't really take points away from anyone and give to anyone else. And that would be true on the economic scale as well, okay? We are going to lecture, so tie the known to the unknown. When we lecture, not your college professor lecture style of the generic type that we think of, but in your lectures, you are going to include place, time, and people, okay? I think time is important, as I illustrated earlier in seeing, 1440, 1492, 1517, those 3 years, events, I should say, that happened, where they took place, the people that are involved with that as well. Also, you want to make sure that you're teaching in a narrative style, okay? A narrative style. I had the opportunity to work with interns as I was an intern myself several years ago. And I tell them at the beginning of their internship, for those that are going into the history program, history education, that if they cannot teach in a narrative style, they just need to change their major. Okay, it's not too late. You absolutely have to teach in a narrative style. We know individuals, right, that are horrible at telling a joke. They accidentally start out with the punchline. Oh, wait, let me back up here. Let me go back and tell this story, and then it just falls flat. And that's how a lot of our lessons fall as well. Okay, so teach in a narrative style and make sure that you get the students involved. Okay, get student interaction, role play. Get the students involved. We're going to take a look at a video clip of one of my lessons where I was teaching on Aaron Burr, right, and the duel, the famous duel with Aaron Burr, okay, and Alexander Hamilton. And so we're going to pull some students up and get them involved, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at that at this time. All right, let's get Logan and Jonathan. Come on up here, okay? Come on here, Logan and Jonathan. All right, Logan, you are going to be Alexander Hamilton, okay? Jonathan, you're going to be Aaron Burr. All right, now go ahead and look at everybody here. Now, back during the day, if you had an issue with someone, okay, you wouldn't go on social media and make fun of them, okay? Send thumbs down, right? You, like gentlemen, meet you out at Main Street. But what they would do is kind of challenge one another to a duel, but it was more to blow off steam. Sometimes they would do this, turn around and just shoot up in the air, and that was it. That's what you're supposed to do. Okay, now get right here. Okay, Logan, get right here. Okay, back to back. I'm going to count it out. Okay, you got your handgun? Get it in your holster. Logan, get it. This is why you died, Logan. All right. Logan, you got it? Okay, he's got it. All right, you got yours? Okay. As I count, you got to keep looking forward, Logan. You're cheating, okay? Look straight ahead. Each time I count, you take one step. When I get to 3, you're going to turn around and shoot, okay? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Logan, you were not fast. Okay. Now, I'm not saying Burr cheated. I'm saying Burr won. His bullet traveled more horizontally than vertically, and you shot Alexander Hamilton. That is not the only time a vice president will shoot someone. We'll talk about it later, okay? I'll just go ahead and tell you now. Vice President Dick Cheney for George W. Bush, he was hunting with his buddy and accidentally shot him in the face with a shotgun. Now, they try to make it into a scandal, and Dick Cheney's like, it was a bad shot. His friend lived and goes, he's a bad shot. It was not attempted murder, okay, or a duel. You don't bring a shotgun. Wait, okay? You just killed him. Okay, now go sit. And I think that you can see that the students had a lot of fun probably with that. And no doubt the 2 students playing Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton are going to remember that famous duel there. But also, when you teach, use sometimes incredibly detailed descriptions, okay? Now, I had a principal my first year teaching, Mr. Dennis McBride, and he would come in and observe me teach ninth grade geography. And that is a difficult class to teach because of the lack of narrative in it. For example, you're teaching, all right, let's talk about Lithuania. They have coal. All right, let's move on to the next country. And it was just very difficult. And so on top of him being an incredibly skillful history teacher, he's watching me flounder in a difficult subject such as geography. And so he would call me into his classroom. And I remember one particular time he observed me teaching on China. We're talking about the Great Wall of China. And I'm thinking, okay, this is something I can talk about. I know a little bit about it. I'm gonna really impress him. And he calls me into his office and he says, Smith, why didn't you mention this and this and this and this about the Great Wall of China? And I'm just looking at him like, what? I never even knew those things. And I asked him, I said, sir, how do you get to know these things? And he said, Smith, you got to read one book every summer, okay? And so what you do is you start picking up some things. You really do. Now, I know that I kind of bashed, big tech and search engines, but truth of the matter is that you can look up information on those things. If it was, or go to a website or whatever the case may be. If it was the bloodiest battle of the Civil War, well, what made it the bloodiest battle? Okay, if the textbook says over 80,000 people died in this battle, look up the exact number. Write that in the margin of your history book, and there you go, okay? If it was, talk about, you can find on some websites the temperature. Hey, it was, 93 degrees when that first shot was fired, and students are sitting there thinking that you did your dissertation on this. No, the truth of the matter is that you just looked up some things as you had your morning coffee, right? And you write that in the margin of your book, and you come across as the utmost authority on this subject, and you keep that up. My first year teaching, 7th grade world history, 8th grade U.S. history, 9th grade world geography, I felt like I was spending over an hour per subject each night, and I thought, I'm not going to be able to make this. Okay, I'm not going to be able to do this. But it starts coming faster. You start remembering the story, okay? The best thing about your first year teaching is that you only have one first year teaching, or at least you should, okay? But even if you've taught 7th grade world history for 5 years, and now you're starting to really get it, and then this coming school year, you're asked to teach 11th grade U.S. history, just the idea of knowing how to prep is going to be much faster to you. Okay, so detailed descriptions. Student involvement can also be with why questions and how questions. Certainly in history, we do have our kind of rote memorized answers, right? Just quick feedback. Who was the first president of the United States? George Washington, okay? But then, not necessarily in that situation, but oftentimes you can follow that up with a how or a why. What would happen in this situation if this had happened? And what we're going to see here in this clip is me asking just why Western states were leading in some areas where they would set precedent, okay, as opposed to those long established Eastern states. So hope you enjoyed this video clip as well.
Why do you think it is, and spoiler alert, Wyoming will become the first state to allow women the right to vote, which is very much a Western state. Why do you think it is that Western states tend to take the lead on a lot of these things? Any ideas on that? Students watching with us that are out west? Jonathan, okay, give it a try. Not necessarily the answers in your book.
Because they were the people that were like trying to escape like what the people on like the East Coast were like doing.
There was a lot of likes in that. Okay, so Jonathan is saying that perhaps people moved out west to escape some injustices, however you wanted to define that, and said, let's not have that be here. There's a thought behind that. Helen, saw you had your hand raised as well.
Life in the West was harder, so women did more work, and if women could handle the work that was done out west, then why can't they vote?
Okay, so you went ahead and got to women's suffrage, right? And that idea. Okay, I was thinking just more leading the way in suffrage in general, but listen, I would absolutely agree with you, and I think that the premise behind that is still true, is that, you know what? We're not these eastern states that have these long-standing traditions, and I'm not against traditions just for the sake of throwing out everything that is traditional. But sometimes some traditions need to change. Well, this is just the way that it's always been done. Okay, well, that's a horrible reason to keep doing something, right? And so out west, you were not found successful because your family had a business that was established 100 years ago. Things were brand new. We all started on a blank slate here. You know what was determined success? Just being rugged, being willing to go out there and I love the word gritty.
All right, so again, a lot of how and why questions. Those are your deeper level, higher level thinking questions that I think we really need to incorporate into our lessons. It really brings it back to that being the independent thinker, okay, not just the rote memorized answers. As a father who now has a daughter going into 8th grade, started studying with her in 7th grade, and, with history, that came pretty easy to me in helping her to do well. But in other subjects, not as easy for me. And what we do not want is for both the student and the parent to get frustrated. The grades are poor, and then there's almost this mentality of, hey, just get a C- and we'll be happy with you, okay? From the parent to the child mentality right there. And so I think what we should also do is teach the students how to study, okay? Teach the students how to study. Tell them that they've got to read, first of all, okay? This is absolutely a reading subject. Think about it in math. So they come to math class, and the teacher is literally teaching a new skill, and they're practicing it that day in class, and probably that night for homework, they're going to go and work on those math problems, okay? So the learning really does take place in the classroom. What we have to do as a history teacher is reinforce what they read, okay? And then, of course, expand on it, make it interesting as well. But tell them, listen, you've got to read, and you've got to read for comprehension also. Teach the students when they're studying that they should be able to retell the story. Okay, they read pages 10 through 15, and we've done this before, haven't we? We've read some pages, get to the end, and thought, I have no idea what I just read. It's happened in my personal devotions, okay? I'll read the same verse 5 times. My mind is wandering, and I've got to stop and go back, and it's creating a discipline in us, isn't it? A mental focus. If they can retell the story, right? So close the book. Mom, this is what my history lesson was about. Look in the mirror, retell the story. It doesn't have to be a dramatic speech, okay? But just, if they can retell the story, then my wife will look at me. She'll say, what was I just talking about? I love you, okay? Yeah, I wasn't listening. So there's a problem with that, correct? Retell the story. Answer the homework questions. Well, of course, they have to answer the homework questions. But in answering the homework questions, now what they have done is created a study guide. So mom or dad can look at the history questions in the book, and then they look at their answers. And so now mom asks, who was the first president of the United States? And if the kid doesn't know, or the answer is different than what they give than what's on their piece of paper, we've got a problem right there, right? Highlight sparingly, okay? Highlight sparingly. You know what? I would also say, we'll go back to homework questions in just a moment. Highlight sparingly. What I mean by that is I think they should be using highlighters or underlining or circling or starring or something. But what you don't want them to do, and there's a tendency to do this, especially in 7th grade, is they box in the entire page with a green highlighter and then they fill it in. So now two things have happened. The entire page is flammable now, and nothing's important because everything is highlighted. But when they are doing their reading for comprehension at night, you know what? This looks important. This looks important, okay? And then when they go back and they just do a quick study of it, it's jumping out at them, which is, of course, the purpose of highlighters, right? Note-taking should ideally be done the night before. And really, I would say that goes back to the highlighting as well. If you have a student that is just particularly poor in history, for me, memorization, easy, okay? Much easier than your analytical style subjects, diagramming sentences, okay? I could diagram a sentence if you show me how it's diagrammed and I memorize, and I can re-diagram that particular sentence. You know, for spelling, I told my students that I was in school, I was a pretty good speller, almost 100s. But then to memorize, or not really memorize the spelling rule, but to apply the spelling rule, that was completely different, right? So I was good at spelling for that spelling test, but you asked me a week later those words, not as good, okay? So there are going to be some students that are they're very poor at memorizing. So what do? We repeat it, we repeat it, we repeat it. Now we're going to talk about how we do that in class, but the students should be doing that as well. And so you can encourage them. I really like our Abeka history books, how there is more really homework questions in the chapter than what is assigned in the curriculum. And so what's really neat about that is you can talk to a parent and say, hey, listen, if you want your child to do this extra work, then by all means, okay? And you can check that as well. But to perhaps do the extra work, but note-taking. Okay, so I am the student that is poor in history class. I'm going to say, hey, every time you come to a bold term, write it down in a notebook, underline it, put a hyphen. That's just the way I remember taking notes in history class, and then writing the definition out beside it, okay? And I'm going to keep a running total. And so this was tonight's homework. I copied down those 10 terms. You know what I'm doing? I'm drawing a line underneath that. And then the next night, I'm doing the exact same thing, and I'm going to get to the bottom and I'm going to draw a line underneath it. And what that line is showing me the section breaks. Hey, this was Wednesday night's homework. This was Tuesday night's term. This is what we went over on Monday night. And then I'm going back and I'm just studying these, and it's going to start getting quicker and quicker in theory, at least, okay? What you don't want is the student that's just feverishly taking notes. They would have been a great Old Testament scribe, right? I mean, they are every jot and tittle they're writing down, but they're not really listening to you, okay? I'm going around teaching, and I am not staying behind the podium. I am walking amongst my students, and I'm looking at their history books. First of all, I'm looking to see that they have their history book out and not their science book, right? But then I'm also looking like, what are you trying to resell this book and make it pristine? There's no notes in it, or there's nothing on a sheet of paper where notes were taken. If they choose to not write in their book, that's fine. So say, hey, when you did your reading last night, what looked important to you? Well, I don't know. Well, did you do your reading? Probably not, okay? All right, so teaching students how to study, how to teach history, but how do we prepare when we are sitting on the couch with an open book and thinking, okay, I've got to present this tomorrow? Well, this is kind of simple. Ready? You got to read. You got to read it, got to read it, got to read it. Don't go in that classroom to wing it, okay? That same principle, Mr. Dennis McBride had a sign in his office that read, you do not have the right to be mediocre today. Listen, that is very challenging, isn't it? We should be bringing our absolute A game every single day, even Friday, 7th hour, okay? I got to do that. So read the material. Perhaps you make an outline, and again, this is going to just start coming quicker to you. Keep a notebook of those outlines. And so next year, You've got it. We should not, if there's ever a subject where teachers should not be reinventing the wheel, it should be the history teachers, right? Think about how you're going to tie the known to the unknown. You're like, okay, listen, I got that concept, but are my ninth graders going to get this? Is the typical 10th grader going to get this? If not, okay, let me see how I can apply this to their life. I said that we needed to have people, we needed to have timeline, and we need to have a place. Where did this take place? I'm teaching world history, and I'm talking about the Greek city-states. I should be pointing at Greece, and I should be pointing out the topography of how the very rugged, mountainous area allowed naturally for those city-states, almost these boundaries, right, for them to be isolated. If I'm speaking on Rome, I need to know where Rome is. Okay, so you got 30 students looking at you. There's a world map on the board, and you don't want to turn your back to them because who knows what's going to happen, right? And so just very quickly, you see Rome, you've got your finger on it, you turn back, you're waxing eloquently about Rome, how Hannibal brought the elephants through the Alps, and people are laughing. And this is a very serious subject to you, right? Elephants coming through the Alps. And you don't know why they're laughing. And you look back at the map, and you do have your finger on Rome. But it's Rome, Georgia, okay? So you don't want to be up there trying to looking for the map. If it's a difficult word to pronounce, practice, and nail the pronunciation of it, okay? And what does it do? It makes you look like you are the professional, because that's what we are. We are the professional, okay? So let's give that impression as well. Look at maps, and I would also say practice the narrative. Hey, how can I say this in such a way that would draw the students in? Perhaps I could leave the narrative with a cliffhanger, end the class with that would make them say, listen, you know what, I could probably cough and tell mom I don't feel well, but man, I want to come to school tomorrow. I want to hear the rest of that story, okay? And just draw them in with it. In teaching Bible, I talk about how God called Noah and his family onto the ark, right? And I said that he sealed the door, and they could probably hear people, I don't know, maybe laughing and mocking them outside the ark. And an entire day went by, and nothing happened. And then another day went by, nothing happened. But on the third day, still nothing happened. Okay, so what you're doing is you're drawing them in, right? And just practicing the narrative style. All right, let's get down to the nuts and bolts of things. How am I going to keep my history class moving? The order of events. I'm not going to write on my chalkboard, prepare for a quiz. First of all, what if I forget to write that and then I go to give a quiz? Then you're going to have mamas and lawyers and people are mad about this. Every day, my students know to be prepared for a quiz. And if I only give a quiz on the days that I write prepare for a quiz on the board, kid's going to stick his head in the classroom, see that nothing's written on the board, go back out in the hallway and hang out for another 4 minutes and 30 seconds, right? So always be prepared for a quiz. The tone sounds, I'm coming around and I'm checking homework. And I'm going not up and down every aisle, I'm going up and down every other aisle because I'm checking both aisles. I'm not collecting homework and grading it. You have enough to do, and you probably would like to have somewhat of a life outside of the classroom. So grading homework every night, no way. Now, occasionally, sure, 10-question homework, hey, pass it up. We're going to grade it in class, just like you would do a quiz. I'm going to count this as a quiz grade. That's fine. But mostly, I'm checking homework. I'm checking to see that their name's on it. I'm checking to see that it is the date, that it is the subject, and it is the right numbers, okay? If you assigned 1 through 5 to be done, and they're showing you 1 through 12, probably showing you the wrong assignment, okay? What are they doing while I'm checking homework? they're preparing for a quiz because they know to do that every single day, okay? And so we take the quiz, exchange quizzes, grade in class, pass forward. They've signed their name as grader. They've seen their grade. I'm going to go back and just real quick look over it for accuracy. And then we're going to go over our homework as well. And so we're going to do 1 through 10. And so I'm not going to go just straight down the row. I'm going to pop around the classroom so that they don't know who's next. I'm even go back to the same kid more than once. And when they're answering the questions, they're reading straight from their homework. And so if the question asked, who was the first president of the United States? The answer is not George Washington. The answer is the first president of the United States is George Washington. It does them no good to memorize a term if they don't have the fact that is associated with it, okay? So make sure that you're having them do it in complete sentences. And then, of course, that's also going to help mom and dad when they're tutoring Junior at night as well. Who was the first president of the United States? Your answer, Junior, okay? And it should say, and they should say, the first president of the United States was George Washington. Then, after we've taken the quiz, we've gone over the homework, I'm going to say, go ahead and put your homework away, turn to page 212 in your history book, put your pen in your book, close your book, look this way, back-to-back directions, just boom, 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 boom. They're going to get used to those. And we're going to review from our last lesson. So I've got terms. I've got them written out. These are the questions that I'm asking from yesterday's lesson, okay? So I'm going to go that, and then I'm going to give a little intro into today's lesson. I'm going to teach today's lesson. I'm getting the students involved, interaction, role-playing. I'm asking the why, the how questions. And then, and I think on the slides it might actually have review and then give the homework assignment. What I would actually like to do is give the homework assignment. That way you can, and then tell them to put their books away. I'm going to give the homework assignment orally twice at the end of the lesson. Say, okay, go ahead and put your books away. Look this way. And now I'm reviewing from today's lesson, and I can review right up to the bell, right? So class ends. If you do that with the homework assignment, the bell rings, half the class is gone, you're still trying to give the homework assignment, they didn't get it, okay? So give the homework assignment and then just review. So how many times have they seen that term? They read it, they studied it at night, they answered a homework question about it. We went over that homework question in class. I taught that topic. I reviewed at the end of that class, that topic, and I'm going to review at the beginning of the class the next day 7 times, okay, at minimum. And then the bell rings and we start over with it, okay? Two other things I want to talk about real quick, and that is current events. In current events, you want to explain to your class that the purpose, the procedure, and the policy. Purpose is to know what's going on in the world around us. It certainly does impact us, right? Procedure. And your curriculum gives this to you, that you're going to state the source where you got this from. And you're going to say, listen, this cannot be a source that's 7 years old. That's not, so this kind of goes into policy aspect of it, right? This is not a current event. We're not doing one on the weather. We're not doing one on sports per se. But you're also, when it comes to policy, you're not allowing a student to attack another student verbally. They can say, I disagree with their opinion on this topic for the following reasons, and then here's my opinion. We do not want it to become a modern presidential debate, right? Where it's just name calling and your idea is dumb because it's different than mine. No, okay, we want to move away from that. So current events is very important. And one of the last big topics there would be for us to pray for government officials. I love the fact that our curriculum sets aside time in sporadic lessons for us to do that. It's going to keep your students' heart tender toward God-given authority in their life, okay? And shame on us as the history teacher if we're repeating the late night jokes about our government officials, and then we expect our students to respect us as the authority in their life as well. We'll wrap it up with me saying to use discernment when giving your opinion in class. Okay, use discernment. Try not to make your history class into a soapbox. And finally, just know that we owe it to our students to be energetic, to be engaging, and to be sincere, with the hopes that they will be students of history and not victims of it. Hey, fellow teachers, I hope that you have the best year ever this coming school year. And then, of course, I hope that we can say that in every year to follow after that. Thank you for being with us.